There once was a girl named Donna. She used to live in Hong Kong, however now she lives in California, and she was in a really good relationship for a time. This man would take her out on dates, like to the movies, buy her gifts, like flowers, and tell her that she was really pretty every day. He complimented her all the time and made her feel really good about herself. But after they got married, he started to hurt her and beat her and abuse her, and she thought everything would change when she had a child. However, it didn't change. The child got older, the man started to abuse the child and the mother, and she realized it was time for her to get out when he tried to strangle and kill her. And she got out of the relationship by going to the local community center, by talking to a physical therapist that helped her realize it was time for her to get out, and that's exactly what she did. She got out of this by doing those things and by writing her story on a website where she could share with others and let go of what happened to her because she wanted to help others do that. There's a Britannia encyclopedia that talks about what domestic violence is considered. It's considered physical, mental, financial, and sexual things that happen between intimate partners. If people listen to this every day, I don't understand why they don't take a step. That's what happens. People know it's happening, but they don't actually take a step to change it in the world that we live in. It's a national and worldwide crisis that we can stop if we lend our hand to others that are struggling with this, and if we help them realize that there are other things they can do to get out of these relationships. Today I want to attempt to tell you and persuade you about how domestic violence is a problem and how we can solve it. I'm going to tell you what domestic violence is, I'm going to tell you where we find domestic violence, and I'm going to tell you some steps that we can take in order to fix this problem. Marie Salambetti wrote a book about how it's an incompetent practice, and that's exactly what domestic violence is. It's a practice that's thrown around every day. People do it like it's nothing, and it usually happens in all shapes and sizes. It can happen in your household, is where it's usually found, between spouses, ex-spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, people that you can be intimate with is usually where this domestic violence is found. And it happens with intimidating, threatening, physical abuse, psychological abuse, and those are all parts of domestic violence in a home. And it can happen in public, but victims will usually try not to run away from this because they feel like if they run away, their abuser is just going to come back and hurt them even more, and they don't want that to happen. I used to have a friend who was in an abusive relationship, and he would beat her and leave marks on her, and I knew she was being beaten, and I tried to help her get out of it. And it wasn't until he almost broke her arm one day from hurting it so badly that she realized it was time for her to get out of it. So with the help of her friends and her peers, she was able to get out of that relationship, and she's now in a better one with a child. So she's living a much better life than she was with the man that hurt her before. It's a scary thing because it's done by people that we thought we could trust and we know we can love, but they just don't want to love us back in the appropriate way. Next, I want to tell you how it affects families. There was a book written about studies and meaning where it says domestic violence ends in murder, or a lot of it ends in murder. 25% of all murders happen in families because of domestic violence. And in the UK, 47% of women are usually murdered by lovers or spouses that they had an intimate relationship with. But not all domestic violence revolves around women. It revolves around men and children as well. There's a report about trauma and treatment where from the birth to the age of 5, that is the time that children have the highest risk of being part of a traumatic experience, including a domestic violent relationship with a parent or a brother or sister or someone you can be intimate with. There's also a study on aggression where women are found to be more physically aggressive than men are in a relationship. And at this point in the relationship, it's important to leave, and that breaks up families because children don't have their parents with them any longer unless the parent gets remarried that was being abused previously. Finally, I want to tell you how we can solve this problem. The first step we can take is to admit there is a problem. If you are in a relationship that is violent and abusive, you have to realize what they're doing to abuse you. You have to say, it's my time to leave, and if you can't say it, you need to go to a therapist who can tell you whether or not they're being abusive. Secondly, you can keep physical evidence. If you have been beaten or hit or cut, you need to take a picture of it, a video of it, and you need to call the police. The police can look over the evidence and they can decide whether or not it's appropriate to arrest or take away the person that is abusing you. Another way is that you need to notice early signs. If there's repeating offenses and physical things that happen all the time and they don't stop, or if they're trying to be a power or control in the household, it is time for you to leave as well. Because if you notice these early signs, then you know that you can stop it right away and that it doesn't have to progress and be worse in the future. And you also need a safety plan. You need to know where you're going to go, who you're going to be with, what your house is going to be. You need to know where you're going to get money from, how your kids are going to be taken care of after you are taken out of that relationship. If you feel unsafe, you need to go to your church or your community center, and they can help you get out of that as well. You can also call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. They will answer any questions you have about domestic violence if you're part of it, or if you're a friend that notices someone in a violent relationship, they will answer questions as to how you can help them get out of there. Today I attempted to persuade you about domestic violence and how it is a problem and how we can solve it together. I told you about what it is, who usually goes through it, where it can be found, and how it affects different family members. We need to come together as a community, as a world, to help solve this problem, or else it won't get solved. We have to help our fellow friends and family members who go through this every day, because we want to be able to free them from this terrible nightmare they're living in. It's a serious crime against women, children, men, against everyone. A spouse and a partner is the main suspect of who will hurt these people in these homes. But it can be solved. If you take a step, if you give them the hotline, if you help them get out of the home, they can be safe and they no longer have to be hurt. It's a problem, and we as humans have the solution. If someone is struggling, do not wait to get them out. And if you're struggling personally, do not wait to get out of the house, because domestic violence will not take a pause. It will keep happening, and if you don't stop it right away, you may not live to see the end of domestic violence.